What if 90% of your business came from repeat referral investors? What if your listings were properties that you might own, helped design, or built specifically for the idea of cash flow? Sounds a little different. That's not a fantasy. That's literally how today's greats run their business, especially when they're investor agents. So welcome back to another re-education experience, Modern Realtors Playbook. This is an additional add-on episode to an earlier one that I've already created. I think it was episode 111, so an easy one to remember, The Investor Agent. In that episode, I broke down what is a very niche avatar in this business, a niche that many agents don't play, or if they do, they dabble, and they usually dabble wrong, which I'm sure we'll talk about with our guests today. And we're going to be taking the investor agent off of the whiteboard, off of the scribble, into the real world today. So in my investor agent framework, I talk about a very specific kind of agent. They work with clients who buy more than one property. That's pretty typical. They speak in numbers. They speak in strategy. They speak in long-term planning, not just beautiful countertops and upgraded kitchens and who's staging the best. Their value is measured differently. It's measured in deal flow, in the analysis capabilities, in the trust they build, and not in how fast they can just open a door and get through the damn lockbox. So when you get this avatar right, investors become super fast moving in your business. Repeated clients for life who bring their friends on and their friends on. When you get it wrong, well, you can end up just burning out with deal junkies, wasting your time and who never commit. So I'm sure a few of you listening might have been like, oh yeah. So today I'm joined by someone who embodies this lane completely. He's a Winnipeg realtor. He's an investor. He's a builder. He's also a colleague at Real Broker. His name is Addison Herosian. And we're going to unpack how he built kind of a referral-driven business, serious rental portfolio that keeps growing, and a stake in a development company, all by becoming the go-to guide for investors. So this is going to be an awesome one. So let me give Addison a little re-education experience intro. So Addison started in real estate as an investor, kind of like me, not as an agent. Over the last decade, he's built significant rental portfolio, big door counts, become a partner, of course, when they launched Real Broker in Winnipeg. Also partnered in something which we'll unpack is Paris Developments. This was a builder focused on investor-friendly kind of infills and multifamily projects, the way I believe it. He might tell me otherwise. And along the way, his business partner, he co-leads the Peters Herosian Group, which is one of Winnipeg's top small teams, one of Canada's top small teams within Real Broker. And he's earned a couple awards, gold medallion, the things that most agents wouldn't know what they are, but they are there for a reason. It's because he does tons of volume and building a business where the vast majority of deals do come from these repeat world, his networking and referral clients, but a lot of the time in the investor world. So he specializes obviously in this multifamily world, the infill world, the investment properties, and he's known for being just honest with numbers because that's what works, deeply responsive to his clients, and ultimately fully invested in this like life of an investor. So Addison, welcome to the show. What did I get right? What did I get wrong?
You honestly nailed all of that, Darren. I was just listening. I'm like, wow, you did. Well, you mean we've talked a lot, we've hung out a lot, so you know your homework on me. So that makes it a little bit easier. But no, you nailed it. The only other piece of the puzzle that I would say you maybe missed was, on top of all of that, a large portion of my rental portfolio does come from my renovation side as well, where most of my stuff that I do buy in my rental portfolio world is being renovated product by forcing that appreciation through renovations. So it's another little business that I say that I have. So otherwise, you
Totally.
nailed it.
Love it. Yeah, that's a hard one in itself to create some rhythm around, which we might unpack as day. So today it's pretty obvious we're going to be focusing on the investor agent avatar, which is one of the five. They serve, build, hold multiple properties, comfortable with terms like cash flow and cap rates and financing strategies and CMHC Select for us here in Canada, right? And that's a super niche. So you're living a real world version of this. Um, in Winnipeg with real clients, with real doors, with real risk. So let's start a little bit at the beginning because where you're at and what you've created in such a short amount of time is wildly impressive. So let's dive into like who was Addison before real estate? Like to get into this world and then to have such a build up. Tell us how old you are, how long you've been in the business, and then give me a little like context to say how do we get to this level kind of prior to this world.
Perfect. Okay, this will probably be the longest answer I give you, Darren. So I'll go through my short form story as I can. I was a kid in high school who was sitting at the back of the class and was somewhat paying attention to what was happening in school while I was at the time I just like on my phone, but reading books as well and researching. I remember sitting in economics class actually, and we were given a task to use the stock market and create a fake, stock market investment portfolio and try to make money with that. And that was like really, that was grade 11. And that was really my kickstart into researching about real estate. And to be honest, to make this story fast, that class started my brain to go down the world of, oh, I learned about investing in real estate and then I just got addicted to it. And I was in grade 12, back of the class. All I was wanted to learn about was how to invest in real estate and get into real estate. So at that time, I didn't quite know how to do it. I didn't have any money. I was a high school student, playing hockey, playing junior hockey. Then I grew up, graduated high school, played junior hockey out of there, still interested in investing in real estate, still learning about it, basically doing practice reps of what it would look like in my Winnipeg real estate market if I did buy something when I had the money to do that. So that kind of lasted all the way up till I was about 21. And then I stopped playing junior hockey at 20. Went through a series of different jobs. I was a bartender. I worked at the youth jail here in Winnipeg as a corrections officer. Pays really well. My family owned a personal training facility, so I was a personal trainer there. Working a lot of jobs and working countless hours at 20, 21, just to make as much money as possible because I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to buy
Mm.
real estate. So that's what kickstarted my brain into that journey. Then I bought my first place when I was right around 22. I bought my first rental property, still living at my mom's house. Put 5% down. And that was the first time that I was like, okay, all the practice reps that I had, that was the real life rep. And I did it and I couldn't believe how easy it was. And then I was
What
like,
type of property was that?
that was a single family home in St. James in Winnipeg. It was a $220,000 house, a four bedroom, two bath home with a garage at the time. Great. I'm 34 years old now, so this was what 13 years ago. So I was a young kid and that was my first property. That's what got me into it. I've been selling real estate for 9 years. So I didn't actually become a realtor until quite a few years after I bought my first property. And when I became a realtor, by that time, so between 22 and 25, 26, when I got my license, I had five properties. So I kind of was buying one a year type of thing until
Yeah.
I got my real estate license. So when I got my real estate license, I dropped everything else that I was doing, dove into it full time and never looked back. And to your point, when I got into it, I was like, I'm going to go in this investor world full steam ahead. This is my niche. I've done it. I've built a little tiny portfolio of five houses at the time, all single family homes. And I was like, I know how to do it though. I know my numbers. I know how to do this, and I know it really works well here in my market in Winnipeg. And I really leaned into that. In my first year of real estate, I remember selling just over 40 homes in my first year of real estate, and I was like about 65% of that amount, so 23, 24 homes was
Yeah,
investors. And I created content around that. I created marketing around that. I leaned into the network of people that I knew that, maybe had a few bucks and wanted to spend it somewhere. I leaned into that world for me, and that kickstarted my real estate journey. And then, really never looked back from there and kind of grown it to where I am now. So that's kind of the origin story of me as a high school kid in economics class, and then learning about real estate investing, and then diving in full year.
totally. I talk about I try to force this concept of clarity on agents when I'm coaching them to say like we need to know who we are so that we can know then who can we serve and the whole thing. Because if we're playing a role that we don't really get stoked about, you're gonna spin your wheels. So you didn't need to do an identity shift. You basically just it fully went into this. I am going to play this role and I'm going to play it. That in itself is hard to do. You had the passion for it, but agents are like, I've got to put food on the table. And they're like, well, my friends call me from here. And like, but for somehow you were able to, even as a young age, put the constraint on, put the blinders on a little bit to say, to narrow that down. And that makes so much sense now that even year one, you did that to where you are today at a place of basically mastery within the investor agent world where so many agents would have just dissipated. They would have just taken everything, gone a different direction, picked this one, picked that one up, and just didn't play into a lane. How did you have that ability to do that? And maybe you probably said no to a few things, I'm assuming.
Yeah, and you know what? It came very naturally, and understandably too. As a young guy at that time, I'm 25 years old, my first year in real estate. I got nothing else to do other than work, right? So it was a lot of tireless evenings. Like that's just real estate, evenings and weekends, right? You're grinding nonstop. Now, to kind of stay in that lane, again, I I knew what I was good at, and I also knew that I wanted to keep building my own portfolio.
Hmm.
When I got into real estate, the hardest thing about investing in real estate is this right here, the dollars, right? Like having money. You need to have money to invest in anything. It's just the name of the game. And I mean, we can regurgitate the same amount of money, which I'll explain that later, but you need to have money. So for me, was getting into real estate was not having a ceiling in terms of what I can make in my day-to-day job, which I will then take that and literally go spend every single dollar that I can that I make in that realtor selling world and go invest it in my other ventures of investing in real estate and build this portfolio. At that time, I didn't have a wife and kids, which I do now. It was very selfishly, I wanted to build something for me. But I mean, knowing in the future, I'm going to have a wife and kids, right? So it was easy for me to stay in that lane also because I knew how important to me the investment world was and getting those investor clients. As you mentioned at the very beginning of the show, it's not I'm going to buy something now and I'll call you again in 10 years when I want to upgrade. It's I want to buy four things this year and then I want to buy six things next year and then I want to buy 10 things next year and then I want to sell all these ones and then I want to do this. One client can turn into a large mass scale of what you are selling. And then that one client has family or friends that want to invest or get into it. Those repeat and referrals in the investment world grows such at a greater length. So I always talk about real estate and your lead flow. I always talk of it as trees and the branches. You have your trunk and then your branches come out of that. So I have one little branch of an investor here. Let's say my top investor, okay? One branch of him, it extends a long way because I keep selling a ton of real estate with that guy. Not only does it extend a long way, well, then his branches that come off of that one guy from his referrals of people that he knows in his world, they extend forever. So one branch can just create such a large, um, you know, deal flow in this realtor world. So that was really what made me lean into it heavily and say, this is where my niche is. This is what I know. I know my numbers so well. I'm living it. I'm breathing it. I'm doing it. Why not just talk about it and be that guy? So that's really what
So,
it was.
so early on in your career, you weren't scared to show a little bit of the journey.
Yeah.
a little bit of the in the trenches, and that instantly, even despite your age, um, had developed this proof of success for folks, and then the right people. So I think about this as like we need to know who you really serve. So you kind of hinted at this. You started to target even early in your world, like the high connectors or the high net worth folks. And that's a pretty courageous thing to do, but you went there. And that you did that. Is that because you felt like I do know this enough
Yes.
and I can lead somebody through this?
Yeah, having confidence in anything that you do, I think, is the most important thing. And it's hard to generate that confidence if I didn't have those properties that I lived and breathed through, right? Like the experience that I had of buying gave me the confidence to approach these higher net worth individuals and sit down with them and talk to them about it. Now, again, a young guy at that age, some of the connections came from their children, for example, or like friends that I grew up with, and they go, my parents have money. How do I do this? And I've helped multiple families build a basically a trust fund of rental properties for them and their families that are sitting in a corporation that is owned by their families, friends of mine, that they have for when their parents go, it gets passed down to their children. And there's 15 properties in some of them, there's 20 in some of them, create that nest egg. So I help to basically map out this strategy with these families to say, here's what we can do. Here's what one property can do. Here's what 10 properties can do. What's your goal, right? And how much money do we have? And then how much money do we have set aside that we want to put into this? And then I started really leaning into those families in terms of, well, at also with those individuals, they go, well, I don't want to pull money out of my investments, which makes sense. I don't want them to either. A lot of them have homes that are worth significant amounts of money. So that have no mortgages owing or very small mortgages. So then I started leaning into the topic of getting home equity lines of credit on their homes and using those lines of credit to invest in property and to build this. And then using the rental portfolio and the money that comes in, the cash flow to pay down the property, or we do the burst strategy to pay it off and just regurgitate. We just use that line of credit to build this portfolio, and then they're just sitting on equity on houses. So I I had the comfort and confidence to talk about it, to lean into it, and I honestly, Darren, I felt so comfortable doing it that there was never a time where I was like, I'm in above over my head. I never felt that way, right? I felt so confident sitting at the table across from somebody and saying, I know how to lead you to this path. Here's how I can do it. I show you it. Here's exactly what the numbers will do. And if I can't achieve these numbers, well, then we're not going to buy that property. So it's
Were you
pretty
selling at
easy.
the time? And I've kind of gone through this journey when I was selling investors throughout my early years too. And you and I have a similar ramp up. Once you do it yourself and you've ran the P&L and own the thing and have to manage it and to deal with the calls and to go through the process, it is trial by fire, and you learn so much that like you realize beyond the crazy spreadsheet, it actually isn't that, what I mean, there's
Bingo.
only so many line items to really
Bingo.
wrap your head around. But the confidence you have versus the agent, if I had 100 agents walk in my office right now and they tried to walk through somebody on that without that experience, they would fall flat and the client would not be served well, right? So it's just knowing that, right? So what were you selling and did you sell the most? Was it mostly cash flow driven stuff?
So in Winnipeg, in our market, and that's the other thing too. This model of my strategy, what I do, can be taken anywhere. You can take it and regurgitate it any place that you do go or you are investing in. Every market is different though. So, you're just taking those numbers and they're just changing based on the market that you're in. So I knew my market very well. In terms of what I was selling to people, it wasn't mostly, yeah, there's obviously some cash flow, but in Winnipeg here, and this is probably every market realistically, but your highest cash flow market in Winnipeg is your like D class neighborhoods. And I just posted about this yesterday, but I would never send one of my clients to like our worst neighborhoods, which would be the North End, where you're going to get the craziest cash flow. You're
Sure.
gonna get like, you'll spend 200 to 250 grand and you'll cash flow well over $1,000 a month, no problem in those neighborhoods. But your tenant quality is gonna be poor. You're gonna have repairs out the yin yang. You're not going to have the appreciation of the property there. You're just going to deal with so much crap that I never went in that world. So why would I
Yep.
teach that world? And I
Hmm.
never wanted my clients to get into that. So a lot of my stuff was in the BC grade neighborhoods, a lot of single family homes, which again, when I was talking to these higher net worth individuals and building these smaller scale portfolios, we'll call them, like, these 10 to 15 houses, it was something that I said, hey, if you don't like it, you can easily get out. It's easy to sell a single family home and to have 10 of them and to sell 10 single family homes than it is to sell one giant apartment building, for example. That's going to be a more niche product. So I really leaned into, again, what I knew because at that time I was buying single family homes, which cash flow well, like enough. The appreciation was there. You get high quality tenants that stay for years and years and years. Like those were the maintenance free rentals was kind of my
Yep.
thing. It's like, hey, you put your hands up, you get people in, you get good people in, and then you let the rest take care of itself. And that's really what I leaned into.
Yeah. I love it because if you're listening, you could just hear how specific Addison had, right? So similar to me, when we were teaching and growing and building, we had a certain portfolio we had chose to build that we were comfortable in. We understood the tenant profile. We could speak the numbers. We understood the vacancy. But then, yes, if I flipped to the other quadrant in the city, it was a totally different game. But some investor agents there would be selling that happily, would totally understand the profile, love the big cash flow, high repairs and maintenance, but they were comfortable there, right? And you and I also know there's investor agents out there that sell to other markets, meaning like, yeah, I'm placing you in another province because I've got, but that may not feel good for you as an investor agent because you're like, now I'm losing. So there's so many ways to skin this cat, even though investor agent is a super niche, right? Um, can you tell me, like, owning your own portfolio, right? The show and tell part of this. What do you show? What do you say so that just the world that is consuming Addy, the realtor, is getting a sense for he's an investor guy versus, pretty counters and sexy home tours.
Yeah. Early on, I leaned more into it, to be honest, than I even do now. Um, I'm going to be fully transparent, and I posted about this not too long ago. I've had this internal battle in my brain for a very long time. And early on, I was like, okay, showcase everything. Here's how I do it. Here's how my numbers are run. Here's what I bought. Um, Over the last 5 years, I've really exploded my portfolio. Okay, so I've been selling real estate for 9 years, but over the last five has been the growth time for me. And specifically over the last 2 to 3 has been like bananas, I'm talking like this past year, I bought some, I sold some, I kept. I gained this past year I gained 30 some odd doors. But I purchased almost 40 properties in this past year alone. So some of those multifamily, some of them larger, some of them single family. I've had this internal battle in my brain for a very long time that if I showcase too much of what I'm doing and what how I'm buying these rentals and what I'm doing and my other side business, that the people in my, realtor world are going to say, oh, he's too busy for me. Okay. And this is a battle that I think all realtors may have at some point in time is that, okay, if you showcase too much, will people think that they're too busy and then they won't make that phone call to you to sell their $1 million property that I'm obviously very good at selling. So I've had this internal battle, but then I've realized that, from early on when I was showcasing it, I never had a problem with people doing that. So they never thought I was too busy then, right? So why would they think that I'm too busy now? So over the last 12 months, I've really leaned back into that in terms of, all right, I'm showcasing what I'm doing at properties. I'm showcasing my numbers a little bit more, like here's what I'm buying it for, here's my ARV on this, here's how much I'm putting in, here's what I'm going to get out of this property, here's why I'm doing it. I think the investment world is very numbers based. I think people that want to get into investing want to see what your return is on something, because at the end of the day, for someone to come call me and go, Addy, I want you to sell me an investment property and I want you to build a portfolio for me. Well, they need to understand that, hey, if they're getting 8 to 10% on the markets, but I can get them 15 to 20% plus. Well, how can I do that? And am I already doing that? Well, if I showcase that, well, they're going to call me to do that, right? So I think it's a little bit of a balancing act in my brain. But at the same time, now I realize that it's showing what I do, and I'm showing the properties that I'm renovating. I'm doing walkthroughs. You're seeing it. It's
Yeah.
I'm showing the renovations, and people love. And I'm gonna talk about Sharon for 1 second here. He said something to me when we were in Anaheim, Darren. He said to me, he goes, um, one thing is 2 things he said to me. One thing he said to me was, if realtors stopped thinking about who can I sell this to and started thinking about how can I buy this, it changes that mentality to say, well, if I can just buy this, if I'm creating wealth for another one of my clients, cool. But if I can just buy this myself, why not? Right. And then as you do that, more and more deal flow comes. You can't buy everything, but there's always going to be that conversation in your brain is how can I buy this? So that was one important thing that he said to me. And the other, now that I was got on a rambling, I completely forgot what it was, but it's going to come back to me. Uh,
Fair
but yeah,
enough.
yeah. Oh, I already got it. That was pretty quick. The other thing that he said was he goes, Addy, if I was you, I would showcase every single thing that you're doing in the renovation space in the investor world, because people love that shit. People love seeing renovation. HGTV is so popular now. People love seeing it. People like knowing numbers. People like seeing what you're putting into it. People like the design. Showcase that. It builds an audience.
Yeah.
And when you build an audience, you build trust by showing that you're actually living in it. So that's kind of where my mentality has shifted a little bit more recently in terms of, all right, let's just show it. Why not? And I'm at a space now. It's like, hey, you know what? If someone is going to think that, that's okay. That's totally okay. And I'm having fun doing it. So that's what I was
I
saying.
would assume too, if you think of anybody, right? I've physically door knocked some of the most high-end luxury neighborhoods in this city, and this would seem like you're the lowest on the totem pole. Meaning the guy shows up at a damn door unsolicited, shows up and talks to me, but those people who own those homes have got there from grit, from hustle, from learning, from putting themselves out there. And the wealthiest folks appreciate that, right? So I think for you and just for anybody listening, when you're showcasing all of this, you're going to attract the better folks. And then all the
Bingo.
pessimists are going to be like, okay. And that you're already changed your mindset is full abundance versus the scarcity mindset, which a lot of realtors unfortunately have, right? And the clients you don't even want in your portfolio would have that kind of like limiting factor. So I love that you're doing that, and I love seeing it. And you're right, network television has been built around this, right? Has been built around these shows, which is so cool. And I love that you can show that. Um, can you? So okay, where do you find and invest? So you're an agent here listening.
Mhm.
You've done a deal yourself. You might own a basement suite. You've bought a condo. Maybe you have a single family. Maybe you flipped one house. Something, one thing, one, two. So you're not fully confident yet, but you're like, I'm vibing this. I want to find investor type clients. In reality, how have you done it? Where has it come from? A lot of your personal connections, the hardcore networking, building that rapport based. I know you're a country club member now. Like, how did you get in front of those folks that we could give a few tips for folks to say, go when, if they're going to go prospect, they feel like they got a little bit of juice behind them now. But where do you find these people? Any take?
Yeah. Um, the first place that I would start, which I did start, was my own personal network. Okay. Think about the list. If you have anybody that is on your list, whether it's past clients that you've already sold to, whether it's friends and family or people that start with those lists. Okay. Start with I'll call them your A players, the ones that you go, okay, I know these guys. have some dough. I know these guys maybe are already in the space that, maybe they're using somebody else right now. All right, we'll have a sit down, meet with them, showcase that you are confident in what you can do for them. Realistically, I would start there. Start with your A players in your own network and meet with them and foster those relationships and start there because like I said with the branches and the long branches with your investor clients, it only takes a few really good ones. And that's what's so cool about this space. So I would start there. Okay. That would be my A list. And then my B list would be okay. Social media was huge for me. Um, Showcasing the stuff again, as I said early on, showcasing everything that I was doing, how I was doing it, showing my numbers. Um, whether it's you buying it yourself or whether you're showcasing what it could be done for somebody else, or if you don't have the experience and you're just trying to gain the experience, do what I was doing in high school and create your practice reps and create those practice reps and put them out on social media and say, well, hey, this property here can do this. If I'm going to use the Burr method, I could buy something like this property right here that's available right now for this amount of money. I could put this much money into it. It'll be worth this when it's done. You'll pull this much out based on the money you have left into it. Here's what your ROI is going to be. Okay, now you're showcasing what you can do for somebody and saying, oh, wow.
Uh,
And that social media, as we know, is a larger blast to an audience, but it is the next best way, other than your A players, to build those A players. It's the next best way to get in front of your B players that say, well, maybe they didn't know about you, maybe they didn't know you were in that world. Well, now they're starting to see it, and if they see it more and more and more, naturally, when the conversation comes up in their life again about investing in real estate or buying another property for investment purposes, they're probably going to reach out to you, right? And they might not even reach out to you, which I've had many times. They might not even reach out to you to help them buy or sell. They might have another realtor and they might ask you for an opinion. And guess what? They might use another realtor on that buy, but in 4 years, 2 years time, whatever that may
uh,
be, they want to do some more, they're using you that time. And it's happened to me many times. So
just
that's what I would say my first two is start with your A players and then go to your B list, which would be taking to social media and showcasing what you could do.
I can tell personally from my journey, all the portfolio that when we've built up and built down and built up again, you don't need a huge network of people that can fund and support. In our case, you and I do joint ventures and stuff, which we'll probably talk about a little bit. But it is wild how far you can go with just a small circle that trusts you, right? To you and to the bigger circle. So you got social media going. Your messaging is investor agent based for the most part digitally, or do you run like a deal of the week? Do you have an email blast that kind of attempts, I use the term dog whistle that Sharon shares, where it's like pulls the investors up to say, yeah, I'd be interested in that? Or are you writing like a typical realtor's newsletter that goes to your database?
You're gonna scold me for this. You're gonna
I'm
love
ready.
this answer. You're ready. Yeah. Um, here's I'm gonna give you the full honest facts about myself. I run at 110 miles an hour, 110, whatever. I run 110 miles an hour all the time, right? You know this.
Yeah,
Uh, my biggest downfall for me personally is systems running these like consistent messages.
sure.
I'm terrible at it. Okay, I'm awful. I've hired people in the past to do it for me. Didn't love it. I've I've got a personal assistant. I've got staff. Whatever. I I've done it, fallen off, done it again, fallen off, but I think that's where a lot of realtors end up going. I will say this from just my personal opinion, and it's not for everybody. It's one of these pet peeves that I have that I know I got to do it and I know I want to do it, but I will say this. Um, I put stuff out on social media on such a consistent basis, no matter what it is, just honestly, whatever comes to mind, whatever I want to create at the time. Um, I showcase personal life, my kids, my wife, my golf. I love golfing. I send so much messaging out on Instagram and Facebook. Is my two spots. That's where my audience is. I put so much out on those platforms that I have not found over the last 9 years that I've really needed to do those email blasts, really needed to do those things. It's more so I take to social, I put stuff out for my following, my audience, which in my brain, which I've felt is kind of like my email blast,
Sure.
because I see everybody that is watching it. It's 4,000 views on my story every time, right? So these people are watching it, and I find that my messaging that I can put out there is I feel it's more value to what people are wanting to consume. And then I use those platforms again to DM people directly. And I'll
Yep.
spend, 10, 15 minutes a night. I'm going through my stories but I also just genuinely like connection, and I
Yep.
genuinely like being social. So I'm on there, and when people post stuff, I'm commenting, I'm DMing them, and I'm having those conversations and just seeing what's up. So for me, that's my lead gen, but it doesn't feel
Yeah.
like work. It's
So
kind of
for
just
you,
me enjoying it.
you're 32 now, you said, is that right?
34.
34.
Yeah.
So start sharing the journey 10 years ago has built this group of people that has seen you grow and mature and gone through this journey and has been you've been nurturing them through this thing most of the time on this platform. And today's social platforms, when done right, are true CRMs. They may not be automated drips, they might not be deals of the week, but if that's how people cure you built for 10 years, you can imagine if you're listening to an agent to say he's got a 10-year journey behind him sharing to this one or two platforms, both from the DM and to the one to many, that it's working, right? And you may not need all things, but it's incredible to hear because you also have people that are crazy dialed in, all digital, writing things into the mailboxes, but then don't touch social. Right. So like it just shows where, you can come from. I wanted to ask you about deal flow because a lot of agents are like, okay, are you actively putting a ton of energy into
Yeah.
hunting deal flow, both for you and for your clients? And give me a little like walkthrough of what that looks like so that people understand an investor agent sourcing deal flow, what that truly means on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. And what's cool about what I just mentioned with my social, what I do on social, is that also translate to helping with the deal flow. Because the audience that I have is my clients, my potential clients, other real estate agents, investors, wholesalers, property owners. The audience of everybody is on this platform for me. So what's cool is, yes, I am always actively hunting for deals. I kind of, right now in my investor world and my investor portfolio, I typically always want to have 5 or 6 projects on the go. And when I say projects, those are my renovation jobs. So, and everything that I do now is buy, renovate, refinance, and rent it out. Okay. So I use the BRRRR. So I always want to have 5 or 6 renovation jobs on the go at all times. Hopefully, those last me about 2 months. And then my next section of 5 or 6 properties is lined up for possession when my other ones are finishing up. And then I just keep reusing that cash to buy these. So in my world, yes, I'm always having to hunt for deals, not only for myself, but then yeah, I have clients as well that are always looking as well. And I can't buy everything, and that's the most important thing about deal flow is um, if you have enough deal flow, then you're never worried about when the next deal is coming from myself or from my clients. It comes from my social. Networking is huge. Locally, I network with everybody, and I think there's a good portion of where my business come from. Obviously, the MLS is still a really good resource. Okay. I'm sifting through there almost daily for investment properties. I am. What's past offer date that could be underrated? What's maybe got a foundation problem that nobody else wants to touch that I can get for a significant discount and do the work myself? All these types of properties that are being overlooked for whatever reason. So I use the MLS a lot. Off market, I am networking with realtors on a daily. Honestly, a huge awesome world of this real broker community is having 230 some odd agents here in Winnipeg that are at real, that know the space that I'm in. And I say, listen, if you bring me a deal, you double end it. If I sell the place, you can list it. You can get three ends from me if you bring me something. What great incentive is that for another agent to bring me a deal, right? I
Totally.
got a property in the market right now that I did the same thing. I let the agent double end it. They're listing it for me, and when I'm right now, I'm selling it for 900 grand. So that's three really good ends. And hey, heck, you might double end this one too. So that might be four ends. So realtors are huge, and then your off-market guys, your wholesalers, and your private sellers, and all that. It's getting in front of them as well, and meeting up with them, and taking care of them, and everything that I do. I'm so big on is ease of a transaction. Okay. If somebody brings me a deal, it's going to be the easiest transaction they ever do, right?
Hmm.
Money's going to be there on time. Closing's going to happen. They're not going to get a call from me after possession because something's not working or, they left stuff in the house. I don't give a shit. Like, I'm going to be the easiest person you ever transact with. And then it's going to make you want to come to me again because if you make one phone call to me, I've bought properties sight unseen, right? I've gone in there one time. I'm not going to ask to go in there again. I know my numbers so well. I'm not going to ask to go in there 100 times before possession to line up, measurements and contractor showings. I'm not going to do that. I'm
Totally.
not going to waste their time. So I'm going to make their life as easy as possible so that it allows them to bring me more deal flow. So those are kind of my sources.
Love it. Yeah, I mean, I found in my market and even my team, there's a lot of junior agents that are just they're hustling, and I'm like, go find these for me. And yes, just like you said, this is going to be the easiest deal. Put it together. These are the terms. Go get it. Pay them a premium, whatever that might be, based on my strategy. And I'm like, you're getting the check. Right? You want the commission, it's yours, right? And I love that. So, in your community of agents, another reason to lean into your community, especially if you're holding your flag up. I mean, like, this is what I do. I'm an investor agent, and people can come to you for that. Now, you've got a lot of deal flow, five, six deals at a time that you're working on. Um, some of them are they all yours? Are they sometimes joint ventures with some of your clients, or is that five or six just like the development team that's crushing these? And then how do you mix in when you got investors wanting the business, but you want it,
Yeah.
right? And how do you manage that? Because I know that's always a fun thing to say because when you're actively buying and you got people, am I competing with you, Addy? And how do you handle that?
Yeah, very good question. So the five or six that I have on the go at all times, those are all mine solely in my company. I have right now I have one person who's like a private lender, like lend some
Yeah.
cash. I just pay them a monthly return on their cash and it just sits in my account and I use that to buy more, renovate, whatever it does, right? Helps the company grow. So otherwise, all these are mine. So that's one piece. Then we have like right now I got seven renovations finishing up. We got I want to say like eight builds finishing up, like brand new construction builds
Yep.
finishing up. That one is with the business partner. So we're 50-50 partners in that venture. So that one we do that collectively. Um, Yet a second part of your question. Oh, how do I manage with the deal flow and my investor clients? That is also a interesting question and also a tough one because, you know, and I say this to all my investor clients in my investor world. Investors come and go, just like anything else. They come and go, right? Right now, they might be super hot to buy something. I get them something, and that one investor is probably, they can only handle one or two projects at a time, right? And they're going to be on the sidelines watching for the next 3 months while they finish those up, right? Cool. Well, over those next few months, they're on the sidelines watching. I'm going to buy some or whatever the case may be. I will say it's a tough balancing act, but I actually very rarely find when it's like something comes across my table where I say, you know what, I'm gonna buy this, but this other person would really, really want this. It's like kind of, it doesn't actually commingle too terribly much.
I love actually that you said that because I've had that same answer.
Yeah.
And so
And
is Brett.
weird though. Like you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it's strange how that happens because
Yeah.
you look at it and you're like, oh, you think it would happen way more often than not. But
Yeah.
it's not because again, same thing. Like I go on the sidelines for a little bit too once I've had everything lined up. And then,
Yeah.
then they go on the sidelines. And then, I might only have three active investors working with me at one time or four active investors working with me at one time. And then they do buy and then they're out. And then sometimes guys take a year off or a year and a half off,
100%.
So it's just funny how the timing of it all works, but very rarely is
Yeah.
it a battle.
There's so many ways to make money in the investment cycle. Everybody's on a different cycle of their own timing, their budget, their ability to create cash, their ability to fund it. And then you have your own cycle and you mix all that together. You might say, I got 5 active clients looking for a basement suite, a property, and you literally don't even have them competing very often against each other. It is just the reality. I lived it for 20 years now with Brett and I, and we've seen the same thing. You've lived it. I love that you share that because it just doesn't happen as often as you would think, which is awesome. The is Paris Developments, is this the renovation company or is this for the
Paris is the
multifamily?
Paris is the multifamily new construction, brand new construction infill company, and then my renovation side is just I just call it Herosian Real Estate. It's a
Gotcha.
number company, but it's Herosian Real Estate. I don't really advertise my that business as like a business. It's just that's my wealth builder. That's my family my family's future, and that's my like passion project, I'll call it. It's
Cool.
called I call it Herosian Real Estate, and I have a company for that, but I don't really like advertise it as Herosian Real Estate.
I want to hit you with a shift into like I always do a bit of I try to do this myth busting round, and it's either I'm busting my own theory and try to like as people listen, be like, okay, that can't work for me, or in this case, when I'm having a guest around the topic. So there's a lot of like bad ideas floating around with investors and what it seems to mean to be an investor. So I'm going to go throw you a few, and I want you to answer, as concisely as you can, I guess. Myth one.
Mhm.
You need a huge portfolio as an investor agent first, because you would say in my head, I can't really serve investors until I have a big portfolio myself. What's your take if I say that?
So I don't, as I mentioned, you don't need a huge portfolio yourself to help others. Okay. I think you need some experience in it. Like I mentioned, practice reps would help in the worst case scenario. Um, Even if you have one though, that's really where you start.
Mm,
If you buy one yourself, I do believe this. I think it's really hard for, some realtors before they even buy a home themselves and actually go through the whole process of like meeting with lawyers and bringing the money to the lawyers and signing all mortgage documents and meeting with the mortgage broker. I found that experience super helpful doing it, like doing it once is fine, but like doing it many times before I got my real estate license, I did find that super helpful. And being able to walk people through the process of it, of like, hey, okay, well, what happens next? It's like, well, I've never done this before, so I don't actually know. Just talk to the broker and
Done.
ask them what their stuff looks like, because I don't know what their stuff looks like, because we don't see what their stuff looks like on the realtor end. So seeing that and going through that on the back end is super helpful. Or at the very least, again, do the practice reps. If you don't own something yet, do the practice reps. Talk to a mortgage broker and say, "Hey, can you like show me what your back end looks like?" And like when someone meets with you to sign documentation, like what does that look like? And can you point out the important stuff to
Yep.
me so I can kind of help guide people with that? I just truly feel like knowledge is power, and obviously having practice reps like anything or true real reps is hugely important. So I don't think you need a huge portfolio whatsoever. I think a very small portfolio, even one house, is going to help you. But at the very least, if you have nothing, do some practice reps.
What if you have 50 people that know you in this life and they none of them own a rental property, yet you showed your journey to get one? that 50 people now have a home for themselves,
Bingo.
and then they come to you for like, so it can be just like you might just be one half step ahead and
Yeah.
don't have to think it has to be monstrous. And sure, that's how business came to us originally. We were just sharing our journey randomly on Facebook when it was 2005. Nobody knew what we were supposed to post, and we were just randomly, and that's how business came my way. But it was because, oh, how'd they get one property? Darren's only
Yeah.
26. You know what I mean? It's just like it queues up. And then,
And
of course, as you go,
And here's one thing I do want to share. A lot of my investor clients over the years, it's not like you don't have very many of these guys that are like, I'm buying 10 properties. You don't have very many of them, right? A lot of them is, I'm getting 1 to 3. Like, you know what I mean? So, like you said, if you did have that one and you showed that journey, most people are only going to go on that journey for 1 or 2 or 3, right? So you showcasing what it took just to get one is enough for them to relate to you and say, "Oh, I trust you. You've done it. Okay, great. That's
sure.
it." You know? So,
How
so
about
yeah,
this one then? I get this one. Investors are all sharks. And what I mean by this is they're cheap, they're disloyal, and they only care about squeezing every dollar out of the deal. So they're so hard to work with. Tell me about that. True or false?
false, not all. Obviously, you're going to have some,
Sure.
and part of I will preface this. Part of the investor world is you're going to find your people. Okay, you're going to find who are the good ones and who are the ones that are going to be your time wasters, and you can usually sniff that out pretty quick. And early on when I was like hustling and I'm like, okay, I'll give everybody a kind of a chance, and you do spend a bit more time figuring that out. Um, Definitely not all, but you also still don't want to say no to some people because you just never know, right? You never know what that person's going to become. Darren, you were at the conference, and I shared a story about a client of mine who's now purchased single family homes and condo mix. They started, they're a server, okay? They're a server. Now they're a manager at a restaurant, but they were just a server at a restaurant. That's it. I've built his portfolio up to, I think, 13 properties now. And he came up to me 3 years ago, gave me a phone call out of the blue, and was like, I see you doing this online. I want to do it. I have a budget of 200K. That's it. What can I do? And I was like, okay, here's our strategy at this. I said, we're going to start leaning into condos. You know, it sounds unorthodox, but we're going to be able to do this. We're going to burr condos. Okay. And we started like 3 or 4 condos, then like small houses. And then, after that was just kind of like, okay, whatever comes. So
Yeah, you just build onto it. Yeah.
yes, you never know what someone is going to come of somebody, but you'll learn pretty quickly what they can do and what their true hustle is. In the world and day and age of social media, and this stuff is highly publicized now. When we were younger and we started in this, like real estate investing wasn't this like highly publicized thing.
Totally.
You
It
didn't
was in
have the
it was
grant.
in like quiet rooms. There was no,
Yes.
it was in like investor clubs that you're like, how do I get a hold of this? Yeah. And you had
Yeah.
textbooks that you would take home. Yeah.
Exactly. You didn't have the Grant Cardones online showcasing this. You didn't have the Thatch Nguyens talking about the Burr method and how they're doing it. You didn't have all this stuff like readily available for you to see. So the world was starting out was like small in terms of people looking at this. But now with the information that we have available at our fingertips and Chat GPT right at our fingertips, people feel more comfortable, but also, they everybody thinks they can do it, and everybody maybe wants to do it. So you do have more of that weeding out phase, I would say, because your investor club meetings are way bigger than they used to be, and they're filled with a lot more fluff than they used to be. Sure, but you also have a lot more volume of possible good ones there too. So it's just about weeding it out, and not everybody sharks, and not everybody sucks, but you'll learn quickly in this world who's gonna be good, and it's just trial and error, really.
I do find that the agents that I've seen do a really good job on YouTube specifically, and where they're putting the big content out that's searchable and findable, and you get these leads come in to buy. And in Calgary, you get a lot of leads right now coming out of the East Coast into Toronto. Maybe not so much now because their equity is underwater, but the reality is there was a ton of tire kickers because it's like headline says buy west. I'm going to go find somebody on YouTube. Oh, I'm hooked, but now I'm nowhere near ready. So putting some constraints around your own follow up and like law of diminishing returns on this. You never know who's going to strike hot, but you can learn pretty quickly when they're just doing it. So that's a good segue. Myth three is you can only do this kind of stuff where I see HGTV, where they're big, sexy markets, massive premiums. You see the big renovation projects. You can only build as an investor agent in those markets. You're in Winnipeg. What do you say to that?
Obviously, that's the biggest myth ever. Um, I bought some two recent purchases this past year. I bought an 8 unit apartment building in a little town called Niverville, just outside of Winnipeg, lower price ranges, but it's a really up and coming neighborhood. They built a new film studio out there. I see the growth happening out there. That was one thing I bought. I bought an 11 unit apartment out in Lac de Bonnie, which is a literal lake town, tiny, tiny little town. It's cottage country out there. And I bought a little 11 unit apartment building out there. And same thing, it can be done anywhere. And there are these super niche little markets outside of these big cities that it works in because at the end of the day, as we said very early on, these are numbers and we're plugging and playing where these numbers are. And I found value in both of those buildings. One I'm renovating, one I'm not. One of them is the rents are just low because they've owned it for so long that I'm going to have to get those rents up and it'll be a super high performer. One I had to renovate it because it was awful, but after I renovate it, same thing, the rents will increase, super high performer. So it can work in any market. It's really just numbers.
Amazing. All right, let's land this plane for our listeners. All right. We've heard Addy talk about the portfolio build. Of course, you can tell there's a lot of wealth that has been created in his journey. He's created a lot of wealth for others. You can tell he's passionate about this journey. He knows it, where he can deploy his learnings into now. He just mentioned even smaller markets that none of us would ever hear of. If if somebody's listening and feeling that pull, investor agent might be my avatar. Can you think, Addie, like what would be like step one for somebody if they're feeling like this might be their thing and I'm finally going to step into it? Where do they go from this podcast? How do they take this forward and say what something meaningful in the next 7 days to kind of like put some action behind? How do they how do they really decide if this really could be for them?
I think there's a few routes that they could go. So if you're really sitting there right now and you're thinking this, I want to be an investor avatar. There's two little bubbles over your avatar right now. Are you gonna be that agent that does buy stuff for yourself, or are you gonna strictly be that agent that's wanting to try and find the investor clients? Okay. And those two bubbles will have different strategies, in my opinion, than what you for your next steps. If you are going to invest for it yourself, start doing those practice reps and getting those practice reps of, okay, well, what can I buy in the investment world? We don't have enough time to even talk about different investment strategies here, obviously.
Right.
Um, but start to research and understand what you want to do if you are going to invest yourself. Okay.
Totally.
If you want to be that investor agent as well and do that portion as well, I would say connect with some realtors that may be in your local market and start talking to them because, I can't even tell you the amount of realtors that I've talked this concept over and chatted with them about. And I think it really does land well when I speak with them on a one-to-one level or whatever group of them and just say, hey, here's what I would do in my market in terms of how to find these people and how I want to advertise myself. But start with somebody that might have the experience in that world, and it can
Yeah.
be in your local market ideally. But if you're like, I don't know anybody in my local market that does this, well, then step out of it and just talk to someone, whether it's you, Darren, or whether it's me or whoever that may be. Talk to an agent who's got some experience in this and understand what is going to be, what your personal goals are because every agent's going to be a bit different.
Sure.
Whether if you want to be the avatar, the investor avatar agent, what your personality is, who the people are in your A class network we've talked about, who your people are going to be in that B class network, what your market is going to change your strategy of ever so slightly, but that small change will actually be pretty significant at the end of the day. So I think you start with talking to people that have done it. Start there, and then realistically, you can strategize a plan out from that. That's kind of what I would say.
So I mean, if I've summed it right, if I there's a lot there, right? So that could be a couple weeks, but I do think you're damn right. This concept of deal of the week, could you even write one? Could
Could
you
I?
contextually, you know what I mean? I know you're like to these agents listening. Could
Yeah.
you
Right.
find on your MLS a deal that works and then contextualize it? And whether that's a social share, whether that's a text to your buddy or your best friend or your to your mom who's got money in the bank, could you simply find one and contextualize why this would be a good one and just try that and see if you can create a rhythm, right? Could be the baseline thing, kind of like when you just get into this business and you have to do a CMA for the first time and you're doing fake CMAs all day, every day to be like, am I even close? Something like that. And then if you're finding yourself bored as hell, you're probably not the avatar agent, for this. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Or
So
if you're struggling to create that and you're like, oh my God, I'm just so overwhelmed to create this deal of the week, like this one deal of the week for this investor client. Well, that's where you do need someone that has experience in this to lead you through this and be like, hey, here's what we look at, here's what our numbers are, here's how we would do this one. This is how you would do this example. And like you said, like anything, your first CMA, it's like if you don't do that with someone who's done it before, you have no idea if you're doing it right or wrong, right?
so
So I really do think having a mentor of some sort in this space is going to help you immensely. And I never had one, to be honest with you.
totally.
All of my stuff was self-taught. It was self trial and error, and it was a lot of when I before I bought my first one, over those first few years of me learning about this, it was the practice reps. I was understanding numbers. I was going on Kijiji at the time, looking at what the rental markets were for houses in Winnipeg, seeing what they were renting for. I was watching those listings to see if they would fall off, meaning they got rented out, to know what the rental rates of those houses would
Yeah.
be. I was following the markets to say what would it cost. I was starting to understand what are repairs costing me, and I was reaching out to contractors and saying, okay, well, if the hot water tank goes, how much is that going to cost? What's a furnace cost? What's a roof cost? These bigger bills. So practice reps and talking to somebody with experience is going to be crucial.
I agree, 100%. For you, you've built a portfolio. You're part of a team. You run a group. You run a development company. What's the best place for people to follow your journey and see what you're doing, and then to learn from you? And as you're sharing, like, is it Instagram your best
Yeah.
place?
Yeah.
And what is
Follow
the
me on
handle?
Instagram. Follow me on Instagram at Addison Herosian. Very easy to follow. That's where I showcase all my stuff is Instagram, and that's
Amazing.
where you're going to see everything from me. So yeah, that's the spot. And you
Sweet.
can DM me on there as well if you ever want to chat and have questions. That's the spot to find me.
Well, buddy, this has been awesome. We could go forever. I had to
Literally.
move like three whole Word document sheets out of this to fit it into a consumable hour. So we took the investor agent here, guys, avatar from theory. I hope you feel into a very real, practical example of how, you can appreciate this type of business and how it can affect you, and the wins and the lessons that Addie was able to share. So for everybody listening, if this episode lit something up in you, do what we just talked about. And here's what to do next, right? Just go back, re-listen to it, because there was a lot we hit on, right? And just connect with the part that matters to you, and the style of investing that might be for you, right? Take action on what Addie said in these next 30 days. See what you can do. And then if you do want to go deeper on some of this stuff, as you know, every podcast I ever do, we held all this information on Rome. Right. You just go to my website, darrenlangille.com, and you can go there to the free resource hub, where there is a summary of Addie's and I's conversation. There's going to be a worksheet you can download, and you can take this in home and practice on it. Everything's free. So I'd love to have you there. And maybe we'll end up doing a live master class and get Addie back on. So if you want to make sure you're on that episode, if I can get them into a Q&A, you're going to have to be a part of that Rome series, and you'll get email requests so that you make sure you don't miss it live. So this show is for realtors on a mission, right? To build a business by design. That's why I do this and not by default. And you can tell Addie is the perfect example of building a business by design. So thank you, buddy, for being there, for being here with us. And I hope a whole bunch of people reach out to you. So I can't wait to see you again
Anytime,
soon.
buddy. Thank you, Dare. Appreciate it, buddy.
All right, buddy. Have a great day. See
Yeah, you
everybody.
too, buddy.
All right. Bye bye.